The sweepstakes for the number one 2026 quarterback are heating up, and NC State, they're in the mix.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs have winded down and the sports stop sporting like we want them to, this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Happy Friday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Kenton, we've talked a pretty good amount about Faizon Brandon these last couple weeks. His involvement with NC State and his recruiting cycle. He was on campus as late as just last week, taking a visit to see Dave Dorn and company. We've heard really good things about his visit. He seems to like the staff. He seems to like the setting. Seems to like the NC State Wolfpack. And we've kind of debated on how much of a real shot would NC State really have at the number one quarterback of the 2026 class. Well, I'm here to tell you right now, we have a real shot. Faizon Brandon released his final 4 schools for his commitment, also announced the commitment date. It will be on August the 3rd, so that is rapidly approaching. The 4 schools, Alabama, LSU, Tennessee, and little old NC State. Kenton, now that NC State is in his final 4 schools, give me a percentage chance that you think this actually could happen.
I'd say 50-50. I'd say 50-50 because, if you think about it, right, statistically, you say 4 teams, 25% is what you should have. Here's why I say 50-50. Based on the information I've heard surrounding his recruitment, the situation there, and his recruitment with certain other schools, I'm fairly certain that this is, at this point, a 2, maybe 2.5 horse race between NC State, Tennessee, Alabama, LSU kind of bringing up the rear in terms of this grouping. That's at least what I've been told. I'm not going to say I'm the grand poobah of recruiting. I'm not going to pretend that I am that guy now, but I just have some sources that are pretty close to the situation that are telling me what's going on here. But more importantly than anything, I think the biggest thing is it's not about the decision on the 3rd is important, but it's more so about the decision on signing day. We would love to have Faizon here. We would absolutely love to have him here. If you told me you can have one of these things, he'll be committed to you all the way up until signing day and then he'll sign elsewhere, or he'll be committed to somewhere else up until signing day and sign with you. Not hard. Not hard at all. And on top of that, a win like this, like I've talked about a lot, when you think of all the dynasties that have been built recently, it starts with homegrown talent staying home. For every school, you have one of those guys that's a absolute, he elevates your program to the next level, staying home, and then more people come along with him. More good things work in your favor, and Faizon Brandon can definitely be one of those guys.
Faizon Brandon would be a program-changing commitment for NC State. He is the number one quarterback in the country, and that is very well verified. He has all the tools and all the skills that you would want in a quarterback, and probably then some. He has the arm strength. He has the pocket presence. He has the poise. He has the speed, all of it. He can do it all. For NC State to be in this Final 4 schools, it is a very small program win in itself. Like I tweeted out, just look at that list. Tennessee, Alabama, LSU, and then us. It hasn't been very often that NC State has found themselves kind of really close to the finish line on the elite of an elite prospect here. You mentioned feeling like LSU is not so much in the mix. I would agree with that. I mean, they just landed the number one quarterback of the 25 class. Going after the next one in 26 feels a little bit risky if you're probably pouring a lot into the 25 guys. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll just double up, but it feels like LSU won't be much of a factor there. Alabama, what I'm about to say sounds like I'm downplaying Alabama, which is insane. But Alabama, I don't necessarily think they're going to be the same Alabama that when Nick Saban was there. Kalen DeBoer is a great coach. I expect him to more or less pick up where Saban left off, but I'm not exactly quite sold on Alabama maintaining that same powerhouse level. I also understand that sounds insane. Just bear with me here. Then you have Tennessee. They have Nico. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he was a former number one quarterback in the country of 23?
It had to be 22 or 23.
So they have Nico now. We're going to see him, obviously, down in Charlotte just a few short months. Faison would make a very nice bridge from Nico off to their next number one quarterback of the country if he is to choose Tennessee. And then you have NC State in the mix. We have CJ Bailey. We have Will Wilson coming down the pipeline in 2025. To add the number one quarterback in the country for 2026, it would change everything for the Wolfpack. Faizon Brandon is like the epitome of the type of guy that high-quality players want to come in and play with. The 4- and 5-star wide receivers, 4- and 5-star running backs, O-line, all of it. You want to be around a talent like Faizon Brandon. Based on what we've heard with his visits and, him liking NC State staff, I would agree with you, Kenton. It kind of does feel like a two-horse race. I've heard that Tennessee is the leader in the clubhouse for right now. That's fine. But if NC State can find a way to make up some ground as we get closer to the commitment date, you would see ripples across the nation if Faizon Brandon picks up that Tuffy hat on August the 3rd.
Absolutely. In the words of the kids today, it would feed generations for him to come to the pack because, it would be a big-time deal for a multitude of reasons. And at the end of the day, getting your best players to stay home, building a fence around the state while people don't feel like the state of North Carolina has the talent. Again, look at championship rosters. They're littered with Carolina guys. Georgia with Jordan Davis. Clemson with Dexter Lawrence. How many times have we seen championship rosters have not just guys who, they're kind of around. No. Their stars are guys from North Carolina. If you can keep those guys in the state of North Carolina and wearing red, you'll be just fine.
He is the epitome of the type of commitment that NC State has sought after for decades. Keeping an in-state talent right here in Raleigh, we have tried to do that forever. And this is the exact type of scenario that we're now finding ourselves very close to at the finish line. So August 3rd will be the date to watch. NC State makes the Final Four schools for the number one 2026 quarterback in the country. It's a small win, but we don't want just small wins. We want big wins. Bringing in Faizon Brandon would be a big fish, and then you get other big fish in the mix as well. So very cool to see NC State in the mix. Can't wait to see how this turns out in just a few short months. Coming up next, we're getting into Fan Friday, responding to our top comments of the week after a quick word from our sponsors. Passion, drive, and patience, that's the formula for winning championships, but it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, and LED headlights, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. That's because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Middle portion of our Friday show. Now time for Fan Friday, addressing our top comments of the week. Here we go. First one comes from Big Dog. They say, this class will continue to grow throughout the rest of the summer and fall. I fear that some rooms are almost being overcrowded, wide receivers and DBs, but can never have too many, I guess. I love the way the transfer portal worked out for us last year. Basically, everyone that transferred out last year, respectfully, wasn't going to get much PT with us. With all the young talent, I'm hoping that they don't get an itch and use the portal to our disadvantage.
Yeah, so I will say this. I think that they attack these positions most aggressively, but I don't think that there's going to be a ton of wide receivers and defensive backs added to the class going forward. Don't get me wrong. Would there be one or two, maybe even two or three to one unit or the other, possibly. But I would see this as going forward, you've got to target your big fellas. You've got to target the trenches. You've got to target. I know we have more linebackers. We're like the old lady who lived in a shoe in terms of freshman linebackers right now, because we got more than we could possibly play at once. But, you're going to need to use up a lot of the attention and time going forward in recruiting on the trenches, because while I think we've done a good job there is definitely a lot of room for us to go out and get some big dogs there as well. And also from the standpoint of guys transferring out and whatnot, it's the nature of the beast. We are a Power 4 team, and the reality is, if you're talking Group of 4, or Group of 5 rather, you're looking at a situation where guys know, if I cannot cut the mustard here, I have nowhere else to go but to a D2 or lower, or FCS rather, or lower. When you are at a Power 4 school and you're not playing, there's going to be Group of 5 teams that are willing to take that flyer and say, you know what, let's give them a shot. Let's kick the tires and see what's going on there. So, I wouldn't be too shocked to see guys leaving, but that roster turnover is already baked in to roster planning going forward.
Yeah, I'll start with the transfer portal part of this. Dave Dorn, much like Elliott Avon, I've said on here before, has a very good track record of not being burned by people that exit through the portal. I mean, with all due respect, anyone that NC State football has lost has not exactly gone on to have a killer career at another P4 or prominent college football program. That's just the reality of the situation. So I think that speaks to the key pieces wanting year after year to stay here at NC State and continue building on the foundation of what is being built. That means something to a lot of recruits. We had someone in our comments of a video this week that said that they actually work with the father of Jarrell Boulder. Jarrell Boulder is a 2025 wide receiver that just chose us over Georgia. And the reasoning was because he sees the type of culture that NC State has built. Like I said, players not wanting to leave through the portal or XYZ, and that meant something to him. He wanted to be a part of a school like that. Proof in the pudding, it matters. So Dave Dorn has a very, very good track record of continuing to build that culture over the years, so much so that he's not losing key pieces through the portal. The 2025 class part of this, they're certainly off to a hot start. They have several very exciting wide receivers. They have their quarterback in Will Wilson. They have a very prominent tight end in Gus Ritchie, couple very nice DB pieces, couple defensive linemen. Where I think they should probably go from here, heavy on the heavy, I guess I could put it that way. You want to beef up the O-line, beef up the D-line. You want to start building out that depth for the big guys up front so they can get into the system, start to develop, and then be key players when the time comes in probably like 1 to 2-ish years. So they do seem to be set at both wide receivers and DBs. After what we saw last year, you can never have enough of them. After what we did in the portal and what we did with recruiting last year and this year, feel very confident in both of those rooms. Additionally, you have tight ends, feel good about those. Running backs, feel good about those. My focus going forward is absolutely on the O-line and then the D-line. Next one here comes from Chris Brevard. He says, I'm thinking that the commitment by Casey's little brother not only gets another great prospect in the door, it likely keeps the Vultures with more NIL resources away from Big Brother as well. It looks as if the Concepcion family is committed to NC State football like the Thomas family was and is. So this is a fantastic point, and I actually meant to talk about this when Arian Concepcion committed to NC State because this feels 100% true. Getting the commitment of Casey's little brother feels almost like a 2-for-1 deal in that KC is a lot more likely to also be here the year after this one. I can only imagine the two of them would love nothing more than to play together here at NC State. It feels like you're not only getting a very exciting prospect himself in Nunu, but also locking up KC for additional year as well. You cannot emphasize how big of a deal that truly is. Talked about it earlier this week. These two brothers, and a lot of the heavy lifting is on KC's part, could very well be on the fast track for being the most dynamic sibling duo that potentially we've ever seen here at NC State. So getting Nunu Concepcion to commit is a very big deal on its own. The package deal with keeping KC in Raleigh as well is just as significant.
Yeah, for sure. And the reality is when you talk about receivers and never having enough and all that good stuff, you're talking about a situation where Nunu is a really great receiver in his own right. He's a really spectacular athlete in his own right, a guy that you would absolutely love to get the ball in his hands and kind of watch him go. So with that in mind, I'm not going to look at him and say, oh, man, there's a situation where we may not want you as much as your brother, whatever the case may be. No. If you can build that strong brand, if you can build those family ties to where you lock in the Concepcion family, that's great. That's great to hear.
Next one here comes from Jeffrey Thompson. He says, DJs are greater than MJs. Didn't exactly see it going down this way, but it is very, very true. The work that DJ Burns and DJ Horn did for this school in the most unexpected fashion, leading this basketball program to an ACC title and then all the way to the Final Four, we will never, ever, and I do mean ever, forget these two. Storyline of DJ Horn returning to Raleigh, the hometown kid, and leading this basketball program to heights that it has not seen in over 3 decades, that will never be forgotten. DJ Horn is a certified legend in the red and white forever, until the sun explodes, whenever that may or may not be. He will be a legend as long as we are living and breathing on this planet. DJ Burns, what more can we say about that guy? March Madness legend forever. The nation is going to remember DJ Burns for his performance in this last March Madness tournament. Abundantly beloved by everyone watching that tournament, and the personality that we all knew that he had for the last couple years. Just a special player, a special human, a special teammate, and a very special part of our Wolfpack basketball history.
And a large reason that Boss Man D-Lo had one of the top hits in the country as well, both of those DJs. Right. It's what a surprise. The DJs were playing the hits and got music going. But anywho, I want to talk about the flip side of this for a second.
Yeah.
The story of the MJs is very sad here because these were two guys who had all the promise in the world. And you were looking at, and I'm not saying sad as in, we know how their stories end up or we know where it goes. Because, again, I'm not one of those people that has any disdain in my heart for MJ Rice or MJ Morris. I hope that those two young men are successful and wherever they go and whatever they do. I hope MJ Morris is successful at Maryland. I hope MJ Rice is successful wherever he decides to go. But when you look at these moments, these two guys are a big reason why I'm always saying, like, hey, I want the black hat, but enjoy where you are. Be where your feet are. Because looking at those two feels like when you looked at those young Thunder teams that lost to the LeBron James Big Three Heat, and you were like, oh, they're going to be back. They're going to be back again. And then Presti blew it up and they never came back. MJ Rice, we know how prolific he is. We know how dynamic he is. MJ Morris, I was sold. I was sold that guy, he was going to be it at the quarterback position for us. And, it didn't really materialize that way. But again, a moment like that shows you how good both of these teams are and the difference in some things that we've seen in the history of NC State, where it's like, if we were to have our potential quarterback of the future leave in the past, we were done. That's 2-3 years down. That's your head coach out the door. Right. Now, all of a sudden, we have a guy that's supposed to be the next coming leave, and then we figure out CJ Bailey's better than everybody thought. And then we get Will Wilson, who everybody is crazy about. That's what I mean by this is, even in these sad moments, you can find that silver lining of we're going to be okay. We're going to make it. We're going to be fine, because what a program Doran's built. Same thing with Keats. We don't look at MJ Rice and like, no, this team's going to be terrible now because he's gone. It's like, man, we wish it would have worked out, but happy trails, brother. You do your best, you be your best, and this team will do the same.
Coming up next, we're going to get into the second half of Fan Friday after a quick word from our sponsors. Our second sponsor of the day is FanDuel. We all love sports. We love them so much that we never want them to stop. But as the playoffs have now winded down, we get fewer and fewer games to enjoy as the summer goes on. And in all reality, it's just Major League Baseball from here on out. But on the other hand, FanDuel will keep the sports going whenever we all want. All we have to do is open up the app and dream up any bets anytime that you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every single day all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Now time for our second half of Fan Friday. Here we go. Real quickly, I want to leave it on this one because as we're recording here, DJ Burns has signed a summer league contract with the Cleveland Cavaliers. No word yet on DJ Horn, but I have to imagine that will also come sooner or later. Congratulations to both of these guys, man.
Yes,
have worked
absolutely.
their tail off, worked their absolute tail off since the Final Four had concluded. We saw that DJ Burns had dropped 40 pounds over the course of a month.
No Ozempic assistance, by the way.
With no Ozempic, the level of commitment and hard work to do something as hard as that is unbelievable. So these two guys deserve a shot, and all they need is a shot. Once they get that shot, they can do the rest from there. So we all know how hard that we're going to be pulling to see DJ Burns make it to the NBA. That would be such an incredibly special moment for all of us that have watched everything that he has brought to this program over the course of the last 2 years. And the same can obviously be said for DJ Horn as well. So shout out to both DJs. We're super proud of them. They're going to represent NC State extremely well at the next level. We can't wait to see everything that they do. Next one here is a second one from Chris Bavard. This one is for Kenton specifically. He says, is Dave Dorn getting better as a coach and manager? Was he always this talented and the program is finally catching up? Or is he simply adapting to modern college football better than most?
So I would say it's a combination of the first and the third here. Dave Dorn is absolutely getting better as a coach and a game manager, and he is adapting to modern college football better than most. How many times have you heard Dave Dorn put his foot in his mouth about NIL, about the transfer portal? Zero. I don't remember ever hearing Dave Dorn say anything where I'm like, God, Coach D, why say that in this moment? He has not done that. And then in terms of coach and game manager, the sequence against Virginia Tech going into halftime where we did not rest on our laurels despite having a lead and despite having multiple drives straight of momentum and scoring, I believe there was something like a minute or so left, and we got the ball at about our 20, maybe inside that, and he said, we're going. And that's what they did. The team went hurry up. They found completions. They found easy yards, and we found a touchdown on that drive. How many points did we win that game by, Grayson?
7, if I'm not mistaken.
Now, Grayson, just out of curiosity, what happens if that team does not go and get aggressive and go get points at the end of the half in that game?
You might not win that one.
The world may never know, and that may throw you in an entirely different direction in terms of the end of the season. I'm saying that because in the past, we had not seen that aggression. We had not seen that, hey, I'm going to let my offensive coordinator cook and get out the way type of deal from Dorn. So he has absolutely improved as a coach, and he is having a situation where he's catching up with he is ahead of the curve in terms of modern college football. And let me say this. I know that when you hear me not acknowledge the second one to the same degree, it's like, oh, do you not think he's a talented coach? That's not the case. It is a situation where I believe that Dorn was always a good coach. I think he's taking that next step now. I think that he's elevating beyond good. I think that he's going to a level to where, we all know that he's at that level where he'll get a plaque or a statue outside of the Carter. He has another level to get to where this thing is renamed Dave Dorn Field at a certain point in time, and he is trending in that direction.
Turns out our answer to this one is actually strikingly similar. I do think it's a combination of both because Dave Dorn, since day one, and obviously Kenton can attest to this, he has been very firm on establishing a tough, hard-nosed culture, hand in the dirt type of style. There's no one that's above anyone else. We're all in this together. It's a brotherhood type deal, and we're going to fight and claw and scratch to get every single thing we can as a group. But where the other half of this comes into play, he's also shown such an impressive ability to adapt to the times. He's brought in newer coordinators that have had extensive reputations. Tim Beck at the time, we all have different opinions of him now, but at the time, Tim Beck had quite the reputation on him. He was a quarterback coach down in Texas. Jobs like that are not easy to come by. So the reputation preceded him. And the first couple of years he was in Raleigh, a lot of success came with that. Dorn adapted to the times there. And now the second half of the Beck saga there, when things started to go stale, Dorn also began to adapt to the times. Now, I know Beck took another job, but I think we knew that was going to end anyway. Then you bring in Robert Anae, and he is an offensive wizard. We only saw 1 year of him. Buckle up for year 2 because I think it's going to be even more special to watch. talking about NIL. We've heard Dorn several times that whenever it's like a big NC State football NIL function, he says, look, we're asking for your help because we are going to compete our ASS off to stay competitive in this new college football landscape. He's not an old dog, but he's also not afraid to learn new tricks. He will do whatever it takes to keep this football program continuing on an upward scale. So hats off to Dave Doeren, man. I know he's been the brunt of a lot of criticism over the course of his tenure, but something you cannot dispute. He has built this program up from when he first arrived. We're now looking at potentially the biggest season of our lives. The biggest season in NC State football history is about to kick off here in, I know Mal would have the number, but I think it's close to like 50 days at this point. There's a world of credit that has to go to Coach Doeren for putting us in this current position that we sit in now. Next one here comes from Shanerman29. He says, with the timing of the Ishmael announcement, followed shortly after the announcement of Ross and Rice, this staff knew what was coming for some time. This also tells me Keats already has someone in mind for the last spot and has already reached out. So again, something that we preach on here a lot about Coach Keats. If there's one thing about Kevin Keats, he's going to use the portal to the best of his ability. We've seen it since the transfer portal became a thing. Year in and year out, Keats is going to use that portal to maximize his roster going into the next year. We talked about coaches knowing how to count when it comes to scholarships. Oftentimes when there's smoke, there's fire. And maybe that's not the right analogy here, but I say all that to say the incoming addition of Ishmael and then the outgoing Ross and Rice, maybe they're not directly related, but they can't be that far off. The staff absolutely knew that this is the direction it was heading in. And I can also tell you the staff is actively working on filling that last spot. There's always a plan in place long before you see any of these moves actually announced to the public. So let Keats cook. Let him get in the kitchen. Let him work his magic and let him and his staff fill out this roster.
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet here. Coach Keats has earned the trust to build the roster and for us to say, hey, whatever you do, we believe in you. He's earned that. He's earned that right. There are certain levels that you need to hit. There are certain things that you need to do that buys you a certain amount of, you know what, whatever you do, we're going to roll with it. And his recent success has given at least one offseason worth of whatever you do, Coach Keats, we believe in you.
Last one here from Andy Alcon. He says, we only participate in 22 of the 38 sports that are in the Director's Cup, only 58%. So yes, these are the actual numbers that I was trying to reference on Wednesday. This is exactly our point. Being in the final top 25, the Director's Cup is great, but the reason that we are not higher than what we are is because we don't have several of these other sports that schools like Stanford and the Dirty Foot Club can capitalize on because they do have them, and they also excel in them. So I don't mean this disrespectfully, but winning all of the sports that you rarely hear about, that is what takes you to the top of the Director's Cup. Although NC State did just have one of the best years in school history, being ranked in this final top 25, that is an accomplishment in itself. Yeah,
and here's a funny thing about that. Even if you were to take away the 16 sports that we don't have, we jump up from 21 to 7. If you factor in just the sports we score points in, we jump up to number 1. So this is a situation where Andy's absolutely right here. You know, you're at a handicap, but you do the best you can with it. And it's, I don't know if any of you have ever seen it, but it's like that video where it's like, all right, everybody take a step forward if you have this thing going for you. If you come from this type of house, take a step forward. Now, we want everybody to race to the other goal line. They're on the football field. And they all start at the first goal line. But then as certain circumstances come up, they take a step forward. Some people end up at like the 50. Some people end up at the 20. And they're like, all right, go run. To start basically at the goal line and still beat everybody in the country except 20 teams, that's a big time deal there.
That'll do it for us here on Friday. As always, thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button. Drop your comments down in the comment box. Tell us what you think the percentage chance is that NC State will land Faison Brandon on August 3rd. Tell us what you think. Does NC State have a real shot at the number 1 quarterback in the country? Let us know down in the comments. Anything else you have on your mind for the rest of this week? Put that in the comments as well. I'll be sure to get to each and every one of those. Everyone enjoy your weekend. We'll see you right back here on Monday. And until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.